Hello, in this lesson we're going to create a reusable fade in and fade out. First, open up the animation that you created near the very beginning of the semester. Then click on File, Save As, and rename this Fade Project. And if you want to change the location where you're going to save that, you should do that now and then click Save. We'll put this one on hold momentarily. We're going to create a new blank file, but you can leave this open. So go up to File, New, and then File, Save As, and name this Fade Template. Again, if you want to change where that one's located, take care of that now, and then click Save. In the Layers palette, double-click on Layer 1 and rename that BG or Background, and click OK. And then choose Draw Shape from the tools, Rectangle. Click and drag and cover the whole stage area. We should change the color. Click on Select Shape. Click on the rectangle. Choose a kind of a pale color, either pale red, pale blue, something like that, and click OK. In the Layers palette, click on New Layer Vector. Name this Fade In. Click on Draw Shape in the tools, Rectangle. You can leave Auto Stroke off. We're going to change this to black. Draw the rectangle to cover the entire stage. Be sure you're overlapping on those edges. I'm barely overlapping, so I'm going to extend it just to be sure. Go to frame 1. In the tools, click on Select Shape. Click on that object. In Styles, click on the black fill swatch. We literally need to wiggle the little bar here in the alpha, the transparency controller, so that we create a keyframe for transparency. After we wiggle it around, and you can just click in here to get it to move, you still want it to end up on the very top. You want this to say 255, and then click OK. If you look in the timeline, you can see there's a mess of keyframes, and that's a good thing. On the timeline, go to frame 24. We need to hold that amount of alpha from 1 to 24. So back over here in the Style menu and clicking again on that swatch for fill, we've got to wiggle this again. And when you're finished wiggling it, make sure it's pushed all the way to the top where you see 255. And then click OK. So we have another set of keyframes. Now we'll start the fade. Move to frame 48. Back to clicking on that swatch again. This time, pull this all the way down here, or just type 0 next to alpha and click OK. If you slide your scrub across the timeline, you won't see the gradual change. You don't get to see that real-time preview of it. You can sample by clicking on in between frames between 24 and 48. If I just click here along the timeline ruler and then push Control R on my keyboard, you can see this isn't quite black anymore. And then if I click a little further along, closer to 48, and push Control R on my keyboard again, now you can see there's much less black and that background is showing through. Now we're going to make a fade out. Be sure you go back to frame 0 for this. And in the Layers palette, New Layer Vector. Name it Fade Out. Temporarily, we need to hide the fade in. It's in our way. Click on the eyeballs here in the Layers palette next to Fade In. Be sure that you have the fade out layer selected here. In the Style menu, next to the Fill Color, click on the swatch. And here in the Alpha, the Transparency Controller, drag this all the way down so that it says Alpha 0 and click OK. In the Tools, click Draw Shape, Rectangle. Be sure you cover the entire stage area. You won't see anything because it's clear. Go to frame 1, click on Select Shape, click on the shape. You won't see it, but click over here in the swatch next to Fill. We need to wiggle this, but be sure it ends up all the way at the bottom after you wiggle it, so it says Alpha 0. Click OK. We have keyframes here now, starting at frame 1, and it's copied it to frame 0. Move along the timeline to frame 24. Back up here to Style, click on the swatch for Fill. Wiggle it again, but we still want it to be at 0, Alpha 0. Click OK. So now we have clear all the way across, all the way here to frame 24. Now let's move on the timeline to frame 48. Up here again, click on the swatch next to Fill, and this time push it all the way up so that we have Alpha 255 and click OK. So it will gradually go to black from clear from 24 to 48. Now we're going to see how these work in another file. First, be sure that you click here to turn on fade in. You don't really need this BG layer anymore, but it won't hurt anything. You can delete that now if you want to, but be sure you save the file and close it by clicking on the little X on this tab right here. So we're back to the project that we opened. Be sure you're at frame 0. Go up to File, Import, Moho Object. This is where you need to find the Fade Template file that you just saved and closed. When you find it, here's mine, Fade Template, click Open. It's going to open up the Insert Object dialog box. We want to start out with plugging in the fade in. So I put a check mark next to only that and click OK. It will immediately insert that fade in, and you can see it over here in the layers. Now if your fade in layer didn't end up on top, you're going to have to drag it up there. It's only going to work if this one is on the top. Next, you need to find the end of your animation. The point where you don't have, I believe the little monster walking was the end of the animation. So I can scroll across here and I can see my monsters off screen. So let's see here. Maybe I'll add a little more time onto that. Go through this process again of File, Import, Moho Object. Open my fade template. This time I'm choosing fade out and click OK. As I said, unfortunately you can't scrub across the timeline and see that in real time, so render that out and see if you got the desired effect. So if you did yours correctly, yours should pretty much come out looking the way mine does here. You saw how it faded from black to the scene, and you'll see how it will fade out to black. And remember, you won't see your fade in, fade out if they aren't the two that are on the top of your layer stack over here. So now that you have that file called Fade Template, you can put the fade in and the fade out into all of your animations with doing almost no work whatsoever. Be sure to follow the instructions on saving this, uploading the video, and providing me with the link so that you can get a grade for doing this little exercise. And as always, if you have any questions, please email me.